Good afternoon. It's just gone 1 o'clock. It's Wednesday the 19th of August. My name is Councillor Vikki Slade. I am the leader of BCP Council, and this is my regular weekly Q&A. Apologies for the slight echo in my location. I don't know about you, but I've had a couple of power cuts in the last couple of days, and having lost my internet this morning for a number of hours, decided to give up and head to a community hall to try and work. Please do ask me whatever questions you like. It's been a busy old week. Some things which we don't yet have a lot of information on, but the first thing to say is that following my good luck messages to A-level and BTEC students last week, it was obviously devastating to see the what they had to deal with on Thursday. I attended a local school. I was a parent whose child was affected, and it was really quite heartbreaking to see what some of the children had to deal with, and the incredible hard work that teachers had done that was undermined. So the council have been working hard with the schools and colleges to try and make sure that the young people get the best possible outcomes, our universities as well, and are working already with the schools in readiness for tomorrow's outcomes of GCSEs. So if you are concerned, then I would be very keen to speak to schools first. They have all of the information that they need, and if young people are needing careers advice as a result of what happens tomorrow, Ansbury is the place to go. They provide the council's career advice and guidance, but schools, colleges are all ready to deal with people, and the government did make an announcement that they are abandoning the computer says no option and going back to the centre assessed grades that the teachers had worked so hard to prepare for so many months. So hopefully the problem shouldn't be as great as they were last week. When is the resurfacing of Wellington Road going to be finished? Gary, I don't know the exact details of every scheme. I'm sure I can find out, and we can let you know what the timing is for Wellington Road. It's not a road I know personally, but we can find out. The schedule of works can be found on the website. You can see what is approved to be done in the next few weeks. So, and it's also, we have a number of options on our website where you can sign up for news updates. We were encouraging it for businesses during the COVID period, and when you go to sign up, you can actually choose all of the things that you're interested in, and I'm not sure whether repairs in your area are on there, but it's certainly worth looking at. How many objectives have been raised about the overcliff? Can it be halted? So, Margaret, thank you for raising that. It's really important to cover that. Myself and the portfolio holder are meeting this afternoon with senior officers, including the chief executive, to look at how this has been handled. The emergency active travel schemes are designed to be experimental trials. They're not designed to have done a consultation in advance and then build something. That's how traditionally things have worked, and that's where you end up achieving absolutely nothing, because people object and panic about it, don't want public money spent, quite rightly, on major engineering projects. And so we've been asked by the government to come up with very short-term schemes that could be done very inexpensively, which can be done within a matter of weeks, and where we can push the boat and try some different things, and if they don't work, we can remove them. Absolutely clear that there is no intention of bringing forward anything which if it doesn't work, can't be removed. So there have been a number of objections raised. I couldn't tell you, I think I've got about 40 emails in my inbox to respond to, but the consultation hasn't opened yet. The whole idea is that it goes into place with temporary planters, which temporarily provide blocks so that you can't drive from one end to the other without a diversion. The original scheme for Boscombe and Southbourne Overcliff was a low traffic neighbourhood, and somewhere along the line we're trying to establish whether part of it has been missed, because we're keen to make sure that whilst also reducing traffic flow and speeds on the overcliff so that people can make alternative choices, that we don't create a problem in alternative roads. So we're meeting this afternoon to actually look at whether that can be resolved somehow. There have been some great ideas put forward by people already, which if we can get them in place, we can do. But I can't stress more, the whole purpose of this is what's the problem? What are the options? What does the scheme allow us to do? So we had to deliver schemes. We had to put the list of schemes to government within 7 days. We then had to deliver them start them within 4 weeks, finish them within 8 weeks. Otherwise, the money was returned. And whilst you could say, let's not have the money, well, we never make any change that way. So a planter can go in, and if the planter doesn't work, the planter can come out and be moved to another project. So this is not about major engineering works at all. I really want to stress that. I should also add that on the 24th of July, all the ward councillors were written to by email with the details of the proposed scheme. None of them, unlike in East Overcliff, none of them came back to us and expressed concerns at the time. In fact, some of the councillors have actually said, well, actually, you could improve it by doing X, Y and Z. So it's quite frustrating and slightly concerning that nobody came to us and said, we're worried there's an impact on this road because we live there or we know people that live there. Can you make some amendments? Any update on phase 2 of discretionary grants, not law? Right. So, Michelle, please don't worry. If you have had an email saying that your application's been accepted for processing or is being reconsidered because of the change in the criteria, we will get to it. We are working as fast as we can, but every single case has got to be individually assessed. Over 300 cases at the same time as the same team having to deal with a vast number of people who had not been able to pay their council tax during the lockdown, and therefore we've had to work to manage the repayment plans and the chasing up of unpaid council tax bills. So the team that's working on this is small. We're working as fast as we can. You know, if you had an email requesting additional information and you've replied to it, then you should be absolutely fine. If you want to drop me an email so I can double check, but I do believe there's about 300. So my instinct would be to say we're aiming to get them done by the end of the month. So please, you know, just bear with us. If you have evidence that you've been asked to provide information, then you're in the system. Okay, when are the sculptures going in at Shore Road as per the architect's drawings? They didn't show bins. Lucy, I don't know. I'm afraid I need to check about why we didn't install sunken bins, probably due to budget. Very often when you do drawings, they are aspirational, and if some elements overrunning cost, then there have to be compromises made. I have seen the sculptures, so I'm pretty sure they're done, but I'm sure that the sculptures have probably been delayed by COVID like everything else, but let's look into that for you. Is BCP Council confident of handling any local lockdowns? Absolutely. We have a local outbreak management plan. There is a member seminar on that coming up on the 14th of September. We're making an updated presentation to the Health and Wellbeing Board on the 3rd of September. The Health and Wellbeing Board is a public meeting, so if you would like to follow that, you can via our YouTube channel. If you go to our website, find the Health and Wellbeing Board link, you can actually watch that and find out what plans are in place around handling any local lockdowns. The good news is that numbers are still very low in the area. I believe it was 9, it was previously 10. So there's no reason to believe that we're on the way for any sort of local lockdown. I just want to say it is becoming increasingly difficult to get back in a timely manner to answer questions we've missed. So I'm going to work as many as I can, but I can't promise to get through to all of them. Facebook changed their algorithm, which means I can't go back in one batch and answer everything. It kicks me out after about 20, and it can take me days to go back, so I'm going to have to ask for your forbearance on that. When we try and contact the council for a new brown bin and for tree works, we get an acknowledgement to be received, nothing happens. Ashley, can I make a suggestion? If you get this problem, this is exactly what your ward councillors are for. Sometimes it might be that there's just a massive delay. It may be, you know, we, for example, in our regulatory team that deal with environmental health and food-related issues, have had 300 inquiries in that they've got to deal with. We don't have any extra staff to deal with those people. We can't just magic up environmental health officers, for example. So things just are taking longer because of the background and the additional work that COVID has brought. So please go to your ward councillor. Your ward councillor will know exactly who they need to speak to get that done. Tree works, there is a tree work form. Presumably you've actually completed the correct tree work form. If you've had an acknowledgement, there should be an email address on there that you can contact. Again, ward councillor first port of call. I'm happy to take anything where a ward councillor has not responded to you, because clearly that's my role, is to make sure that members are leading the members in an appropriate way. So please escalate that to me, but please go to your councillor first. BCP online service road I've been unsuccessful in reporting using the site. Can I report another way? Saroma, again, ward councillor, that's exactly what they're for. Please give me another lifting bridge. Joe, I'm wondering whether you might be being slightly sarcastic on that one. I did actually have the privilege of having a site visit to the lifting bridge a couple of weeks ago. Now the proud owner of my very own BCP high-vis jacket. I've always wanted one. But absolutely fascinating, that the complexity of what goes on underneath the water, absolutely incredible. But we are moving very close to a resolution on that. The bridges are working. Clearly there are always going to be issues with anything that's mechanical, and when you add in something that's marine and mechanical and electrical, then things do get more complicated. But I'm feeling fairly reassured that the future is sound for our bridges. I've talked about Southbourne Overcliff, spending taxpayers' money on repainting lines at Cooper Dean to prevent further crashes rather than wasting it. So Cooper Dean is part of the Transforming Cities Fund. Our Transforming Cities programme launches this week. There was a member seminar for both Dorset and BCP councillors last week to look at the Transforming Cities programme. So you'll be able to see all of the progress on all of the major routes that are covered by Transforming Cities. The Emergency Active Travel Scheme are short-term, small projects to actually get people active, specifically set by government to require councils to do these things. The Cooper Dean projects and large projects like the Ringwood Road and the road between Wimborne and Christchurch, all of those major projects which are going to see super highways for bikes and bus gates and bus lanes and things like that, they are going to be taking place over the next 2 to 3 years, and they run into multi-millions of pounds, as opposed to, for example, £10,000 that's been allocated for planters. Okay, welcome to other exercises. Well, Matthew, if you think they're excuses, don't watch, that's your call. You know, I'm explaining how the council works. If you'd like to give me an example of an excuse you think I'm making, I'd be very happy to respond. Okay, I'm going to ignore the Southbourne because we've covered it, so please don't think I'm ignoring it. At the meeting, can you discuss Evening Hill, which has been incredibly successful, and the High Street, which... Okay, let's talk about poor High Street. If businesses don't reopen, that is not the council's fault. A restaurant on the lower High Street doesn't reopen because one car can't park outside of it for the evening. Most people that go to the restaurant on lower High Street will go and park somewhere in a car park and spend the evening, or better still, they'll cycle down there or get a taxi down there so they can have a drink. I have seen so many pedestrians now in the Poole Quay area walking home after a fantastic evening in a traffic-free environment, whereas they previously would have been getting in their car. So I absolutely reject the fact that 3 more businesses have gone. Well, some of those businesses, like Pizza Express, were already going. One of the other businesses that was challenged was sold last year, hasn't yet reopened. Another business has decided not to reopen because their kitchen isn't big enough to facilitate social distancing. They aren't not opening because somebody can't grab a takeaway from a high quality restaurant. Deliveroo, Just Eats, all of those things are still doing, deliveries. There are rear entrances that can be accessed. There are all sorts of ways we can overcome this. So the high street is actually doing pretty well. Some of the businesses are doing better than ever. The Quay is doing incredibly well. And for Evening Hill, I can confirm we've had nearly 3,000 bikes using Evening Hill in the space of a week. There's just over 3,000 bikes over that week coming down the hill. 2,880, I think it was, coming up the hill. 97% of whom were cycling on the road, 3% cycling on the pavement. But in the uphill direction, the allegation that everybody's pushing their bike isn't true, because we've actually got 7% of people pushing their bike, 3% of people actually who are using the pavement, and 1% who were actually riding in the road outside of the lane, which frankly, out of 2,880, that's a tiny amount of people, and they're completely bonkers. But it shows this absolutely working. So we will be reviewing it at the end of the 6 months as promised. But it's incredibly successful, and I would encourage you to actually try it. Okay, all the new cycle lanes are in pool. Nobody thought to see the drains. Pool is underwater. People are still going to cycle, and we're going to be even more underwater if we don't do something about the climate agenda. So how about we work together where we all do things to stop people from making the climate problem worse. The cycle lanes in Poole, I don't think there's an underwater problem with the Quay or the Evening Hill. The Keyhole Bridge, one of the benefits of making that cycle and pedestrians only is that we can resolve the fact that that is below ground level, and therefore it floods. We can't do that if it remains vehicle access, because the height would not be possible to get normal vehicles under it. So I'm not quite sure what is meant by that comment, Verity. Am I going to look into the decision about not giving beach hut owners at Durley Chine a valid alternative? Okay, so we are planning a fantastic new environmental education hub at Durley Chine, which we have government funding for, which the MP supported, and which will require, I believe it's 11 or 14 of the beach huts at that location to be removed. The beach hut tenant, if you have a beach hut, you have no right to that beach hut forever. It's an annual tenancy. And we made it clear last year that this project was coming. My understanding is that the tenants affected were written to some months ago to let them know that actually the environmental hub was going to be in the location that would mean that their beach hut would no longer be there. The beach hut owners or tenants were given an alternative location. I'm checking about whether the price in the annual tenancy for that is the same or higher. There is some challenge around that being a higher price, but if it's a more premium location, then that would be understandable. What we could have done was we could have said those 11 beach hut tenants should have a priority over the next 11 people on the waiting list who may have been waiting a long time as well for a beach hut. The decision was taken operationally that the fairest thing to do was to offer an alternative, but not an alternative in the same location, because it's not available. So what we're doing is we're providing a facility that is for thousands and thousands of people to provide a new attraction for the seafront that everybody will benefit for, and unfortunately 11 people won't have a beach hut at their location anymore. My understanding is that we actually, on notifying those individuals, stop charging for the beach hut, and they've actually will have around 3 months of free usage over the summer of that beach hut before those huts are taken down if the planning consent is given. We have to work incredibly quickly to deliver this project, otherwise the government funding it won't be, we won't meet the government restrictions. I don't like the idea of speaking to the MP and telling him we didn't get it done. We do need to work very quickly. Lisa, will the council be issuing TPNs to parents who keep their children? Okay, unfortunately, the government have been very, very clear that it is the parents' responsibility to send their children to school. We are going to be as mindful as we can where there are special reasons for children not attending. For example, sorry, it's going so fast. For example, where there are medical reasons, but children, if the government deem and public health deem it safe for children to go to school, and schools have made huge works to get their children back into school and make sure schools are safe, then we would expect children to be at school. We are required to take advice from teachers when they say that a fine needs to be issued, and ultimately if the school believe that there is a reason to issue that fine, then we will do that. But we are mindful that there are special circumstances, and we will look at those individually. So we're very keen to make sure that everyone feels safe going to school, but please don't blame us for the government's policy. The government says that children should be at school, and they are expecting schools to actually take action if parents don't do that. Okay, if the experiment causes problems, so Margaret's asked a question, if the experiment causes problems, but it stopped early, yeah, but if there's problems, please believe me, we're not going to be dying in the wood over something. We want to make sure this works for everybody. What are the council's plans for Paul Civic Centre and Christchurch Council offices once the staff have started vacating the buildings? At the moment, we're looking at a variety of schemes. We will look at all options, whether it be selling the properties, whether it be developing them ourselves, whether it's reusing. Paul Civic Centre is listed, so there is part of the centre that has to be maintained, and we're looking at how we might be able to use it directly or with partners. So there are lots of plans coming up. I'm just about to send out tomorrow actually an email to members asking who would like to be on a working group looking at the detail about what the new civic hub at Bournemouth needs to look like, how it's going to work for everybody, and it will in due course look at the options around Paul and Christchurch. Staff are able to still work in all three buildings, but because we want to stop it being a cost to the council taxpayer running three buildings as quickly as we can, we are working very quickly to clear desks in parts of Bournemouth so that we can make space for those people who do need to come back to work in the office. There will be a lot of people who will decide to stay working at home, and we'll be encouraging that and facilitating it as best we can, but there are some departments that just don't really work at home, and there are some people who don't have facilities at home, so they're obviously very happy to come back to work in the office, and that's all being managed quite carefully. Can I get my curb lowered at the moment? You can apply for a curb to be lowered in the same way as you always could. We're obviously running behind in delivery, but there is a process to follow and a fee to pay for curb lowering. Okay. Why do I have to put up with bin lorries emptying bins before 5 a.m. to the council-run Cllr home and the road needs sweeping? Probably those are things you need to take up with your ward council. They're not strategic. But if it's a bin lorry to a care home, it may well be that it's not the council bin. There may be a private contractor. So probably best to go via your ward council and ask them to make an inquiry. I think that is the Cllr home in possibly in Boscombe. I will double check. Our council planning to well, I've covered that one. Why don't we do what Isle of Wight do and stop parking charges at night? Why would we stop parking charges at night? If we stop parking charges at night, I think we'd have even more overnight parking and even more people camping in their cars. So there's no reason why we shouldn't charge people to park at night. Otherwise, we would end up with people who live near a car park using our public car parks every night to park their domestic cars, which wouldn't be right. Okay, we still have prostitution on Southcote Road. Oh, Catherine, I'm so sorry to hear that. I know where you are. I think you've been in touch with me before. There are regular Springbourne chase-ups there. You really need to report to the police. Okay, so the police and the council work really closely together in a lot of matters. But there are some things that are the job of the police, and there are some things that are the job of the council. And there's a disconnect at the moment in a lot of attacks coming to the council for not doing things, when actually a lot of those issues are in relation to the police. We're also hearing that people really can't be bothered to send their complaints into the police anymore because they get ignored. They don't want to sit on 101 for 20 minutes because no one ever comes back to them. Fundamentally, if people do not report to the police, then these things don't happen. The police are not going to come out on the presumption that someone mentions on a Facebook Live there's a problem. You have got to report every incident that you see. And I know it's a pain holding a 101. I don't do 101 either. I go on the website, on the report it function. I can then be confident that what I want to say is said. I can upload photographs, I can put details on there, and I don't feel that maybe someone hasn't quite understood my problem. You need to report every single incident, whether it's a bike stolen, whether it's a threat of harm, whatever it might be, you've got to report it. If you don't report it, I can't sit in a meeting and say, we've got a major problem in this area, and the police say, well, according to the records, there's no more antisocial behaviour than there was last year. So do me a favour, everybody, if you see an incident, report it. If you report it, and the reporting and the numbers of crimes and antisocial behaviours go up, doesn't necessarily mean there's more happening, it means there's more reported, but it gives us the argument to go back and say, we're doing our bit, we need you to work with us. And that's the same across the whole of Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. Okay. Zoe doesn't think I'm respectful. I'm a stroppy mayor. That's fine. I'm quite happy to be a stroppy mayor because I'm not quite sure what the respect is that you think. I'm answering your questions. No safe crossing between Lansdowne roundabout at the last Royal Bath. We can put in safe crossings if people ask for them. You need to apply for them via your ward councillors or via the website. So, how come we only have 12 car charging points? Salisbury has 50. We are currently in the process of letting a new contract for our electric vehicle charging points. I think there are a lot more than 12. There may well only be 12 council ones, but they are not. They're not the only ones that are there. There are lots of private ones. There's lots in supermarket car parks, etc. We are currently, letting them. We're looking at a new contract, and as soon as we get the funding for that, then we'll be able to progress more. Okay. Bridge Street traffic lights are not working one way. Stacey, could you report that for us? If you go onto the website, you should be able to go into the report function and report traffic lights not working. That they do pick them up very quickly, and if it's an emergency issue, there will be a phone number that you can call. Okay. What are the council doing to enforce licensing and insurance for cyclists? There are no licences or insurance required for cyclists, so the council's not going to enforce something. I wouldn't support licensing for cycling. Children should be encouraged to cycle as soon as possible. As soon as they're old enough to walk, they should be on a bike. So it's not down to the council to do that. There's no law that requires it. Okay. Bullying, intimidation, housing officers, management picking on tenants. If you have a problem with a council officer, if you feel that you're being treated badly, you need to put in a formal complaint. There is a complaints procedure on the website. If you're in council housing, if you're in Poole, it would be PHP, Poole Housing Partnership. If you're in Bournemouth, it's the Bournemouth Housing Team. You do really need to put in a complaint. Making comments on Facebook isn't going to get you anywhere because you need to go through a process. And I'm not quite sure why you're suggesting that council officers are Freemasons. No evidence at all. So. Okay. Guess it's... Keen to hear my response to the objections to Southbourne. Liz, I explained at the beginning I've got a meeting this afternoon with the Chief Executive, the Head of Transport and the portfolio holder, and we're looking at the details of whether the scheme is exactly as we'd intended. I am slightly concerned, as I said at the beginning, that ward councillors were notified of the intention on the 24th of July, but none of them came to us and said, could we do this? Could we change that? These are the problems we think it's going to have. Buzz, I'm sorry to hear that the CCTV at the beach has been targeted again. I will check what's going on with that for you. Okay, when will the Embassy Youth Club reopen in Winton? Laura, I think you asked this before. It's down to the local team in youth clubs, community centres, etc. when they reopen. Legally, they're allowed to open. The youth team aren't operational at the moment because their priorities are around complex children. In terms of making sure that we're safeguarding children who have been out of school for a long time and are therefore at huge risk of child sexual exploitation, county lines, etc. So those priorities have to come first. Youth clubs that are running usually often run only in term time, so you wouldn't expect them to be running at the moment. But I think Winton Embassy Club, that's the snooker club, I think. Snooker clubs were delayed in opening because of the ball handling, I think. But it is down to community centres how they choose to reopen. And I think I've explained this before, that if a community centre run by volunteers or a management committee have, say, 10 different groups using their centre, it's down to them to decide how they can best social distance and provide safety between the different bookings. So it might be that they only reopen for 4 or 5 of the facilities that were there. That's really down to speak to the local group. It is down to them to make those decisions, and the council are supporting them where they can. Many of the community centres have been able to access grants that we've helped them to secure, but we're doing everything we can to reach out and help them to manage the process and keep people safe through COVID. Okay, it's just gone 1:30, so I'm going to close up, but I'm just going to finish about talking about the COVID situation. Tercia has asked the question, can you get a fine for not putting a mask on in a shop? It is mandatory for people to wear masks on public transports, in shops, churches, lots of other indoor activities, bowling alleys. Pretty much the only places you don't have to wear a mask is in your office environment, or if you're in an eat-in restaurant, and you don't have to wear a mask in those cases. However, the enforcement of masks is not down to the council. So I'm going to come back to in a moment when it is down to the council to support this. But on public transport, it's down to the transport operator. In shops, it's supposed to be down to the shop operator. But ultimately, there are an awful lot of people that don't have to wear a mask because of medical issues. And a lot of organisations are not challenging because they quite rightly don't know whether someone does have a medical condition or a mental health condition, which means that they're entitled to not wear a mask. However, you are correct in that the Prime Minister made an announcement that he expects masks to be worn, and he's now increased the fine. And ultimately, you could be fined as much as £3,200 if you're a persistent offender in avoiding wearing a mask. Really, I think we've got to be fair to everyone. We're not going to get our economy moving if we don't wear masks. And there's an awful lot of vulnerable people who need the rest of us to be wearing masks so that they feel safe going out. So please, wear a mask. If someone's not wearing a mask, then ultimately, they may have a very good reason. So I would encourage you not to challenge people. But the police do have the right to challenge. But again, the police only have a certain capacity, and they will look at what their call-out rates are. If they have to leave a domestic violence incident, or an incident where a child is being abused or sexually exploited, or there's a fight or there's a car accident, because people are calling up about masks not being worn, we would absolutely not support that. But I'm sure that the police will, where they see people not wearing a mask, challenge if they feel that it's being abused. There has been a change in legislation last week where we are encouraging the public to tell us where there's a problem, and that is if a business does not appear to be complying with the COVID secure regulations, then you can contact Environmental Health and we are able to act. So there was a change in policy last week that said barbers, hairdressers, beauticians, people who are doing close contact work now have to wear a medical style mask at all times when they're up close with their clients, and a visor. If they're not being worn, then please let us know. We will pay a visit to a company and help them understand the new changes. They may not be aware, but we do have the right to take enforcement action where companies are flouting those regulations. I would also encourage you very strongly that where you are seeing organisations who should be helping with track and trace, so for example, if you go to a pub or a restaurant or a bar, that pub or restaurant or bar should, if you're inside, be asking you to leave your name and address, so that if there is an incident of a local outbreak, that we can track and trace everyone that's been there. We have had a lot of cases, and it has been on the national news in Manchester, where bars are not actually asking people, and actually when they're being challenged by people are saying, it's not the law, I don't have to. Why don't we just all work together on this? You know, if you go into a bar, the first thing you should be doing before you ask for your rum and coke or whatever it's going to be you're going to ask for, ask them, do you have a track and trace form, and I will sign in. Because I'm sure that if there is an outbreak, you'd want to know that somebody you've been in contact with has actually got COVID, so you can protect your family and other people. So if you go into a bar, they might say to you, it's guidance, it's not mandatory. We're hoping that the government will make that mandatory, because it's very hard for our officers to deal with it while it's guidance. But you should be encouraging businesses to behave respectfully towards us as consumers. So please do ask them, where is your track and trace form, and fill it in. If you're going to be inside in a bar or a restaurant, it doesn't apply if you're outside, obviously. And a lot of places are now taking orders on phones so that they don't have to have people coming inside. Okay, I'm going to just take one more question from Phil Dunn, who's returned recently from France, so I know he is self-isolated for 2 weeks. He's asked whether there's anything done on rapid transport. Just to say that we are looking at all forms of rapid transport, whether it be trams, light rail. We've just been looking at some trams that run on the roads. Some stuff that's going on in Scandinavia. We're looking at all the options. I get the impression that all of our councillors, for whatever political party they're from, support some form of rapid transport system between the main centres to help ease congestion. I know we did an event last year where I think there was only one councillor who didn't support the idea. It is incredibly expensive. And we would need to have significant external funding, and we do also have limitations at the moment in the devolution of transport. At the moment, the only places that have been given funding for this sort of thing, or have been given the rights to run their own transport networks, are those areas that have elected mayors. We don't have an elected mayor. It's not something that we've looked at the moment. You know, there is a push through devolution over the next couple of years to create new councils. Frankly, I think we've been through enough, and I would reject anyone forcing us into an even larger council. But there does seem to be a driver for these super councils that are sort of 1 to 2 million people with an elected mayor for a region. And if that is the only way that we can get funding, we do have to consider what that means for us as an area. But certainly rapid transit as well as active travel are the solutions, and that means working with our bus companies to have a single ticketing system to try and harmonise the ticketing. I'd like to see a flat rate fare wherever, and I'd like to see that extended further outside of the conurbation, because lots of people come in and out from Wimborne and Upton and Ferndown and places like that, and New Milton. It seems ridiculous that as soon as you go over the boundary you're suddenly paying a lot more money, but I'd like to see us spending a lot of money on that. I'd like to see us really ramping up our cycleways, our cycle education, bikeability. I would like to see for all children and any adult that wants it too, but certainly if we can do something radical, then we will try and do that. I would just add, when you do radical, there are always going to be people that don't like it. There are always going to be people that resist change. And my real ask today is give things a chance before you attack them. because these things aren't designed by somebody sitting in the pub right on the back of a fag packet. Not that you can have that in the pub anymore, but you know what I mean. They're designed by traffic engineers who've actually looked at accident rates, likelihood of cycling, seriousness of accidents, and trying to actually comply with the government agenda, which is to try and move people out of their cars and into active travel. So whether it's an active travel scheme, or whether it's a regeneration project, or whether it's a, changing something from an administrative office into redeveloping it into housing, give it, suck it and see. We've got some really exciting opportunities ahead of us. If we don't go with ambitious ideas, we'll never know if they work. And particularly if they're low cost, low risk schemes, then we really should give them an opportunity to work before we assume that they're condemned to failure. What's more important to me is that we say these are temporary schemes, these travel schemes. I give you my commitment that once they're in place, if there's evidence that they don't work and that they're actually having a counter effect, then they all have to be reviewed. None of them can be made permanent unless they go through a full traffic regulation order process, which includes full consultation. So they can't be done by the back door, and you've got this on record. They can't be done by the back door. This is a consultation during the trial, not no consultation. And that is a new method of consultation which the government are promoting and asking councils to do. Yes, it's different, but it's not hiding anything, otherwise I wouldn't be here talking about it now. So, please also be mindful of language. There is no pedestrianisation of the Overcliff. There never was a pedestrianisation at East Overcliff either. The fact that the cars can't drive from one end to the other and there's a small area where bikes can go through doesn't make it pedestrianised. It just makes it different. So let's see what happens. And I will not see you next week. If you remember, we're on a fortnightly cycle. And I will be back on the 2nd of September. But please do remember, you all have ward councillors. It is their job to come to you, for you to go to them with your ward related issues, and then come to the council for the strategic matters. So thanks very much, and we'll speak to you soon, and let's hope that the weather picks up. And good luck for GCSEs tomorrow for everyone that's taking them, and for those worried parents and teachers.